So Aaron, how did you want to do this? Did you want to do a little intro first, and then we kind of go into some questions with Rick? And Rick, did you look at all the questions? Welcome back to 1 Month to Live. We are picking up where we left off. Just a quick recap. If you remember, we had 4 sections to the book of 1 Month to Live by Chris and Kerry Shook. The first section was Live Passionately. The second section was Love Completely. Learn Humbly was the third section. And now we are on to Leave Boldly, which is all about creating a lasting legacy. So hello, Aaron.
Hey, Terry. It's good to be with you again. And yes, we are in this last section of Leaving a Legacy. We're also going to talk to some people from our church about what legacy means to them and to really explore that more broadly and to get to know each other. So we're starting out today with Rick Hipp, one of our elders. We're glad to have you with us, Rick.
Hi, Rick Hipp.
Hi.
So Rick, when you think of legacy in the perspective of what we've been studying, really since last November, maybe, what does legacy really mean for you?
Well, I think that when I think of legacy, I think of what people are going to think about me after I'm gone. How they're going to judge me. How I say history, but how a couple generations are going to think about me. That's what I think of. And I don't think they're going to think about me much longer than a couple generations, unless you make some historically profound statement and history remembers you. Generally, people in general, 100 years from now, don't give a rat's rip.
Exactly. Well, Rick, I know that Ecclesiastes is one of your favorite books of the Bible, right? And so Ecclesiastes has a perspective on legacy a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it talks about as you go through life, what God has given you is a gift, and He wants you to enjoy it. He wants you to eat, drink, make merry, all of that, live life to the fullest for yourself, and with God's given you. And then what you do is you go through life and you gain a bunch of stuff generally, and then you die and somebody else gets your stuff. So gaining the stuff is not the important part. It's how you lived according to God at the end. That's the important thing.
Right.
We're now joined by Dean Kennedy, one of our elders, and we really appreciate that, Dean. And I guess we're going to start with the same question we started with Rick. What comes to your mind when you think about the legacy that you leave behind?
Well, I think it's important because there are a lot of people who are looking at you or looking at me, your family, of course, for one, your kids, your wife, and anybody else that's in your family that you have an effect on, but also where you work, your friends outside of work, and of course church, and all those places that you have contacts with. They know you, and everything you do, everything you say, you're giving them an impression of what you're like and what's important. And someday when we're gone, which we all will be one way or another, people are going to look back and they're going to remember you, hopefully. And I think the legacy is what are they going to remember about you? If you're a big sports personality, probably the first thing people would talk about would be, man, he was a good basketball player or baseball or whatever it is. And but for us, for me, I think the most important thing is what will people say about my relationship to God, and what kind of an example was I as far as how well I represented what God wanted from me. And a lot of times that's not the first thing that comes to our mind. For a long time when I was working, that was an important part of my life, so I always wanted to do well there. And when you leave, you hope people will think well of you, and some of the things that you started or got done. Hey, remember when Dean did that? Or I can say, yeah, well, I was a big part of that. And the thing that I realized, though, after being retired now for about 8 years, is people quickly forget what you did. And like right now, there's probably 2 people left in my district that I even know, because everybody is retired. So, nobody even knows who Dean Kennedy is. And at this juncture, at least as far as my what I did for work, but the people that do remember me are the friends that I made. But they remember me, most of them, for things that don't really have a lot to do with work. It was more of how I treated them and how I treated others. And what I hope is my legacy is that if people look back, they can say, well, I can see that Dean was a believer, and I can see his behavior most of the time matched up to what you would expect of a Christian. What I would hate to hear is people saying, seriously? He believed in God? He was a Christian? That's hard for me to believe the way he acted, So even in small things in every relationship that we have, we're leaving a legacy. And it's just a matter of what's really important and what kind of a legacy are you leaving compared to what God would want. I think what God would want you to leave.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a couple of great points, Dean. We have a saying at work too that every interaction is an opportunity for trust. You can either earn it or burn it. And so, the way that you talk about interactions, just even non-work related, people that you used to work with remember non-work related stuff. Every interaction we have is an opportunity to strengthen our faith and to strengthen someone else's faith or encourage them or to burn it. We can just be a bad example as a Christian, and we can do discouraging things, or we can strive to be the light that people need in this world. So it's a great point. It's a great point. And so do you think like some of the things that you do daily that are more than about just the stuff, like maybe conversations you have with people or, raising your kids or spending time with your spouse or with your church family, how does that tie into the legacy that you leave? I mean, I know, a couple generations, maybe nobody remembers, but is there a legacy piece in our daily lives?
Well, probably so. And I don't know if you'd call it the legacy piece per se, but I remember distinctly when we first had Sam, our oldest, and we had him, and then we had Ellie, and they're getting a little bit older. They're in their like 1, 2, 3 years old, whatever. Meg pulled me aside one day and said, "Okay, this is it. It's time to grow up now and take hold, be the leader." Yeah, she got me. Yeah, she did that. And it's true. I was doing whatever I want to do. I'm a daddy now. That's all good and well, and it does change you, but yeah, suck it up, be a man, take care of the family, do what you're supposed to do. That part's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's legacy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because a lot of times when we think of legacy, we think something very formal and a lot of planning. But what Meg was passing on to you was it's the daily stuff. It's how you live, interacting with your kids when you get up and they're getting to school really makes a big impression on somebody's entire life.
Absolutely.
So after Meg did that for what really changed in your life?
I spent a lot more time. I didn't spend a little time, but I made sure I made time for the kids, made time for her, discussed God, like it tells you in the Old Testament there, as you walk the path, as you get up, as you go to bed, as you sit down to eat, talk about God, talk about my laws, my rules. Just remember me, all that. I tried to do a lot more of that. And I'm pretty pleased with the outcome. As best I can tell, they turned out all right. So,
right. Yeah, well, the kids did anyway.
Sure. That's Meg's doing.
That's right.
Yeah. So Dean, you talked about your family. Have you seen the way you think about legacy change when it was you and your kids versus you and your grandkids?
Yeah, it's changed to a degree, but I'm still, I'm still working with my grandkids. I try to let them know, and just point blank tell them, here's when we're out we'll go for a hike or something, and I'll talk about, look at this is what God made, and this is how, some people think that it was just a matter of we started from a big bang or something like that, and all these things, just happened. And I try to have a little bit of a conversation with them and talk about what really makes sense. Does it make sense that that happened, or does it make sense that this beautiful flower and this butterfly that's on it right now was made by somebody, and that somebody was God? So I think I'm more trying to uh, help them understand that God is real, and that He's an important part of your life, and it's not just all about uh, learning certain scriptures and making that your. It's almost like I think we can get too caught up in uh, learning and the scriptures and things, and making that, I hate to say it, but almost like our God. That's what we're kind of worshiping. Well, we've got it right, and as long as we've got it right, then we're okay. And the longer I'm on this earth, the less I think we can 100% get everything right, because everybody thinks differently, and they can take scriptures and look at them and say, well, what you think is wrong, because here's this, I'm reading it, and this is what it says to me. And you can get caught up in that to the point where you won't even talk to other Christians, because don't talk to them, because they've got it wrong, and we don't want anything to do with those people. I think there's a balance in there somewhere.
Right. That's a legacy of its own. So as you think about like your kids especially, or advice that you have for people younger, right? So what advice would you give to people that maybe do think about a legacy or do want to live a daily walk with God? What would you tell people?
Well, all I want out of this life is to live it as God would have me to live it. I want to show Christ, and that's sometimes very difficult, especially in this day and age. A lot of weirdness going on, but I want to show Christ. And when it's all said and done and I'm gone, immediately I stand in front of God. I want him to say, welcome, good and faithful servant, step in, good to have you here, that kind of thing. It's be great to see him face to face. And I'd like to advise people not to get caught up in all this making a name for yourself, unless it's just a happy coincidence you're doing that. But to try and seek to do that, I think that's a mistake myself. I think that takes your focus away from God, and it's just, I don't think it's very fulfilling. Spend all your time on carnal stuff in the world when you should be focusing on God. It may have a coincidence that you do make history. Great, that's all fine and dandy, but don't make that your focal point.
Yep. Give the glory to God. Yeah, good point.
Yes.
Absolutely. So Rick, we see you in your shop, and we see a beautiful old vehicle back there that you're restoring.
Yeah.
There really is a legacy tie-in, and we really try to leave something for other generations, to recognize. And I know you're a big car guy. You enjoy working on the cars, and I can only imagine the impact you have on people as you work on their cars and interact with them. So it's one of the ways that you've blessed our church and many of folks in our church who have needed car assistance, and that's a legacy people remember of you.
Something just reminded me of when you said that. When I do this car stuff and restore a car for somebody and they're all happy about it, I don't realize how much that means to them, how much of an impact it has on their life, and how much they're impressed by my profound knowledge of cars and wisdom.
Right.
How good I am at all this stuff. They think I'm just the greatest thing since sliced bread for the car, and I don't see that. And it's good. It's nice to hear that, but I don't think about that. I'm always surprised when somebody says, "What a great job this is," and all that. It surprises the heck out of me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's great, right? It's great to make that tie-in because you're good at something that other people appreciate. And they can also look back and say, oh, yeah, that guy, he restored my car. He did these great things, or he fixed my car. He did this. Oh, yeah, and he was a Christian. He talked to me about church, or maybe he got me to go to church, or we had a great conversation about God one day. I don't believe all that stuff, but, I talked to Rick, and Rick had a good perspective. I mean, you can tie those things that you do here on this earth to what is not of this earth.
Absolutely. And then at the end, God says, come on in. That's all I care about. I don't care what you think about me 50 years from now. If you're still puttering around and I'm gone, that's fine. You can say, what a schnauzer, whatever, but
And we will.
yeah, I know you will.
So when you were working those many years, were you cognizant of your legacy, or is that wasn't one of your main focuses from day to day, either in your working relationships or even your home relationships?
I think it was always in the back of my mind, and especially with my kids, what kind of example am I setting for them? And, what's interesting though is sometimes you think you are leaving a certain legacy or example for your kids or whoever, and then you find out later when they become adults, they didn't get that. I thought they did, but apparently not, And so I think it's important with whoever it is, whether it's with our kids and or a friend or a coworker or somebody else at church, that we think about maybe just take some time to reflect on what we are showing them, and is it really in a way that's going to affect them or make a difference? Because sometimes you get caught up in, I think with me, especially with church related things, as I was caught up in the rule following, follow the rules, do this and everything's going to be fine if you do this. And I wasn't, maybe, of course, I don't even know if myself, maybe I didn't quite get it, but I think it's very important for us to be living the life and doing it because we love God, and not just, well, okay, here's these scriptures that say this and we have to do it because if we don't, it's wrong and God's not going to be pleased with us. I mean, those are, it's kind of a double-edged sword because those things are important, but if that's the only reason you're doing it, if your mindset is, hey, as long as I follow all these rules just right, God's going to be happy. But if I don't, then he's not going to be. And so if you're doing it just for that and not because you love him and your actions are flowing out of that, I think there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, so that's a great lead into kind of our next point, right? So how do you tie your legacy, your personal legacy, to God's kingdom?
Well, I think the first thing is making sure that there's a way for people to know why you're doing what you're doing and why you are the way you are. It's going to have to come up sometime because even on a lot of times people equate your actions, how you treat others and what kind of a person you are to, oh, he must be a godly person because he's a good guy and a nice guy. And that's all important. But if they don't know why you're doing it, there's a lot of nice, good people out there that maybe don't believe in God, or they don't do what they do because of God. They've got another reason for it. And so if you're living your life the way you are because of God, I think somehow, without shoving it down people's throat, you've got to let them know that, hey, this is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. And you don't have to, I think some people are afraid of alienating or, getting in trouble at work for saying stuff about religion. I mean, where you work, Terry, obviously, I think it's probably not taboo to talk to people about God, at least somewhat, but some places, they'll, if you're not careful, they're going to report you to HR and all that good stuff. Right. And, but you can just put subtle things in there like, well, this weekend our church is doing something, and it kind of at least lets them know where you're coming from.
Right. If you live that way and think that way, you're definitely leaving a legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I inadvertently did that, and I didn't even know I was doing it apparently, because when the kids get off to college, which is a great place if they don't go to a Christian college. Sometimes I don't know what I hope they're teaching good things there, but the comparative religion classes and things like that, they'll come back with a question like, hey, why do we think we're so much better than everybody else? Here's all these different denominations and various religions that believe in God, and we act like we're the only ones that have it right. Why is that? And that's apparently the kind of attitude that I gave off, and everybody else is, well, they're all wrong and we're all right. And I look back on that and think, yeah, I could have done better in that regard, because you have to beware of false teaching, but on the other hand, you have to realize that I don't believe we're the only Christians. But I think there are many Christians out there, and if you alienate them, I don't think that's accomplishing what God wants us to accomplish.
Right. Well, a little bit what you're referring to is kind of a denominational legacy, right? Where has our denomination been, and what legacy have we left, and what legacies are we struggling against today because of, what was done 100 years ago or 150 years ago or 50 years ago.
Right. And we have things, the problem that because of the information age that we're in now, where everybody, including kids, can pick up their phone and learn about anything from anybody, and many different viewpoints, we have issues that we haven't really dealt with in our church, and I think need to. But when you're talking about the issue of homosexuality and those kind of things, they're being taught in school what the school, what the popular belief is in that, and if the parents don't tell them what God says, and if the church doesn't, and if we don't say anything about it, I think we're setting ourselves up to just have our kids believing whatever they're taught on the internet or in school, and I think that's a problem. And we need to do a better job of figuring out how we're going to put God's message, tell them what God's message is on that, and we need to do it in a way that we're not just condemning. I think our way of handling it in the past was something like homosexuality. It's wrong. We don't have to talk about it. God says it's wrong. It's in the Bible, so we don't subscribe to that. We don't talk to those people. We don't. And the problem is, if you don't talk to, if you tell yourself, I can't talk to anybody that's a sinner, homosexual, or somebody maybe that's into things they shouldn't be, how are they ever going to hear about God if we don't tell them? And if we won't allow ourselves even to come in contact with them, how can we have a conversation, and how are they ever going to learn what the truth is?
Brilliant. No, I appreciate your time, Rick. This was, I guess I've known you for a number of years and always enjoyed my time with you. And you are a good role model. You will leave a good legacy for Meg, your kids, and for many others of us as well. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Definitely.
Terry, do you have any last questions?
No, I think that was great. Dean, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time this evening. It's been great to talk to you and catch up on this legacy idea. For those 12 viewers of ours that are still watching, this was our kickoff to legacy from 1 Month to Live, our 4th section of this book, Chris and Kerry Shook. So please stay tuned, watch the videos, watch them over and over. That's the point of the internet. It's free. You can watch it as many times as you want. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yes, thanks, Dean.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.